Welcome back to another episode of Catching Up with Coach. The last time I had an episode, I had to have a Roach show. I had Mike Roach on the show. We always wanted to do something together. And now I have another special guest on, my fellow Nova Scotian. He's been an assistant coach at Dalhousie University. He's worked for Basketball Nova Scotia. He's been an assistant coach at, you have to say that again because I've forgotten. I think Loyalist University, did you say?
Loyalist College.
Loyalist College.
Yes,
And we have a very special guest. I think he's president of the Bennett Sturts fan club to Toronto. But Ryan Dickinson. Ryan, good to see you again. How are you?
Oh, great. Thanks. Awesome to be here. I really appreciate you reaching out and invite me to chop it up and talk a little NBA draft, a little Raptors. So it's always great catching up with you, Tim, and looking forward to this pod we got on the go here tonight.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm a former coach at Acadia, and Ryan was at Dow. We were coaching around the same time. He was on the men's side, I was on the women's side, and we were, good to have those experiences in basketball when you get to work with coaches and players at very high levels. So, and you get to travel a little bit too.
That's right. Yeah, basketball sport, it presents all kinds of awesome experiences and opportunities and national championships and larger scaled events as such. But yeah, it's great connecting with fellow Maritimer and knowing that we've gone through our grind of the AUS and OCAA and NBLC and Canada basketball, you name it, we've been on it. So happy to connect on the Scotian front here for sure.
Absolutely. And that there was a big game for our folks don't know. I talk about my personal connection to me watching RJ Barrett, and that was in Halifax when Team Nova Scotia played Team Ontario U17 Nationals. And this team from Nova Scotia won.
Yeah, no big deal. Yeah, that was the start of a few.
Start of a few. I think we're the start of two in a row, I think, at the time. Were you at Basketball Nova Scotia at that time?
I was. Yeah, I was there at St. Mary's University with all the rest of the proud Scotians cheering on Nate Darling and watching the Scotia boys capture gold.
Absolutely. And we got the rosters up the other day for Canada basketball. Nate Darling is on there. RJ Barrett is on there. There's probably more players in that game as well, probably more so in Ontario that might be, playing at the highest level of Canada basketball right now. It's really good to see just the growth of the game of the last 10, 15 years. And much of that has to do with the Raptors' success, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt. I mean, that championship in 2019 really, propelled the sport forward, not just in Nova Scotia, but across Canada. And maybe even, beyond, given some of the athletes that were on the roster that season. But in Ontario's defense, I mean, I'm sure they were missing a few guys. We were missing Lindell Wigginton, another notable Canadian who's played at the NBA level and professionally and what have you. But no, it's great. It's great to see the talent coming out of Canada with the BioSteel games or the All Canadian games. And even on the girls' side, I was just following up with Canada basketball here tonight and watching some clips of Gabby Morash from Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, do her thing on the U18 side. So it's great. Nova Scotia is always producing talent and a lot of pride and passion for the game here.
Absolutely. I feel like outside the Maritimes, maybe Nova Scotia is one of those forgotten provinces for basketball for a lot of people. Like if you're just used to what's going on in Ontario or in BC or Quebec, you might forget that small province, to the east that actually has produced some pretty good basketball players in the last 10 years or so. And it has been for a while, but in particular to playing in Europe or playing in the NBA. You just mentioned Lindell Wigginton and Nate Darling, just a couple. It's very encouraging to see about the growth of the game, men's side and the women's side.
Yeah, talent top to bottom. I mean, Kellen Tynes is another one who's excelled at the D1 level, and he's getting an opportunity with an NBA G League team now. Denisha Provo. I mean, I can go on and on. The list is endless here. But I mean, this day and age with social media, I mean, we see it a little bit more, and we're a little bit more exposed to perhaps some of the talent that is tip to tip within the province of Nova Scotia. So it's great. A lot of history, a lot of tradition there. And as a whole, I think we've done a great job of growing the game.
Absolutely. I think we have. Now, this is why we're here tonight, is the draft. the Raptors have the 19th pick overall, and they have the 50th pick. But the 19th pick, it's a big pick in this draft. I've talked to a few people who have said, you guys are at that spot where you're going to get someone pretty good because it's a deep draft. It's top heavy in terms of top four guys per se, and it's kind of broken up into tiers from what I've been told and from what I can kind of view and observe. But I'll ask you, Raptors get the 19th pick in the draft. Who do you like?
Yeah, I think there's a handful of prospects that I do like, and I'm sure anyone who knows me and has been following me close lately knows that Bennett Sturts is certainly near the top of that list. I should clarify that I've been so gung ho on Bennett Sturts simply due to the fact that I really truthfully don't believe that the handful of athletes I do like a lot will still be available at 19 on the board. Now we are seeing LeBaron Philon slide or slip in some mock drafts. Whether that's true or not remains to be seen. He was, projected to go 13th approximately, per consensus to the Miami Heat or somewhere around that ballpark. We've seen his name kind of drop down those mocks a little bit. But Morez Johnson Jr. out of Michigan is someone that I think really could excel within, what we like to do and who we are as an identity. Cameron Carr is another one that's been, talked about at length, just due to his versatile skill set, his out of this world athleticism, what he can bring as a, at the very least a 3-and-D, to add to our shooting guard depth, so to speak. And there's certainly, other bigs on the board like Quaintance and Sinak and Hans Steinbach. I mean, there's a laundry list of athletes really depending on how this draft shakes out and, who selects who in front of the Raptors at 19 and whether there's any trade activity. But I do love Bennett Sturts simply due to the fact that I really don't think a lot of those athletes are going to be available.
Yeah.
And I do believe he offers a lot of really what the Toronto Raptors need. And I know before people get too, bent out of shape here about, fit and how we should be, how most teams really do target best player available. I think that come time for our selection, there will be a few guards that, the Raptors will be looking at. I haven't mentioned Christian Anderson, Abuka Corey, as a couple others as well. So now we'll see, because there's some guards in the later rounds as well at that 45 to 50 ballpark that the Raptors could pursue if they decide to go big at 19 or if they decide to go big elsewhere throughout the market outside of the draft. So those are just a handful of the names that I do like, and we can dive a little bit deeper into each one of them if you wish. But it really all depends on what they decide to do with some of the higher paid players on this roster as it is currently constructed, and how that ultimately plays into their plan and their strategy draft wise.
Good points. They're so their cap situation is not good. There's not a whole lot really they can do. Trace Jackson Davis, they can decline the team option. Okay, I feel that frees up a few $1,000,000. They maybe don't bring back Mamu. Hard to say. They maybe trade Grady Dick. I like Grady, but I've told many people before, you can't shoot 30% from three, you're not going to last in the NBA.
Yeah, you've been far more patient with Grady Dick than I have. That's for sure. And I give you credit there, because we saw flashes of it last season, right? Now, granted, last season was much different than this season, and of course, Jacoby Walter, popped off there and really kind of took that spot, from Grady. But nonetheless, he's still young, and perhaps there's room for growth. And I've been seeing some posts here recently where he's in the gym and he's working out with some of the Raptors staff. But yeah, to your point, I mean, if it were me, if I was running the Raptors, I would look to shed that salary. Mamu's interesting because he did have a relatively successful regular season. Kind of flamed out a little bit in the playoffs. He didn't shoot the ball as well as maybe many Raptors fans would have hoped. But again, if he's increased his value, where it's a little bit out of the Raptors price range. They may need to get clever with how they do utilize this draft class, and whether they do decide to try to target some bigs, or whether it be some versatile wings, like an Alan Graves or what have you, to replace someone like a Mamu at a more affordable cost.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, I think, I mean, we can even get into the RJ, Barrett situation in terms of what they're going to do there with him. And there's been rumors and whispers, reports that IQ has already been shopped, and they want to get off Jakob Pertl, but they don't want to have to toss in too many draft picks or draft capital attached to that in order to get off that contract. So there's so many different ways in which they can operate here. But I think you nailed it on the head. I think it's some of those periphery, tertiary players, outside of the ones who are making major money, and then of course the young core who have kind of showcased their value in terms of Jacoby Walter, Colin Murray Boyles, and even Jamal Shed. You can throw in that mix as well.
Absolutely. So I'll ask you, because I know you mentioned about Bennett Sturts earlier. Uh, Tell me how you think he would be like. Why do you think he would be the guy at 19? Like, how do you think he would help this team?
Yeah, I've exhausted this on my timeline, and I appreciate his basketball IQ
Yeah.
immensely.
Yep.
I think there's so much that Bennett Sturts brings that doesn't show up in a box score. The intangibles, the leadership qualities. We've mentioned the endurance. I just think ultimately what coach asked of him, I mean, like, they put an entire program or two programs and said, we are trusting you, Bennett Sturts, right, to really establish a foundation at both of these schools, or all of the schools he's been to. And he's proven it every step of the way that he can, lead a program, further than it's ever been, with relatively limited talent around him.
Yes.
And I think his shooting ability, not that he, and there's other great shooters in this draft. Christian Anderson has been labeled as one of, if not the best shooters in the draft. I believe Bennett Sturts is still the best pure shooter in this draft. A lot of the shot attempts that he was responsible for were high degree shots, high degree of difficulty shot attempts. Late shot clock, buzzer beater, grenade type of
Yes.
shots that I think will only see his percentage increase at the next level. We talk about increased space on the NBA, at the NBA, compared to what he was accustomed to at college. And again, even the style of play, everything was just a slow pace, bogged down, half court offense that he was responsible for running, which the
Yeah.
Toronto Raptors struggled with heavily. They really struggled in the half court. We know that they like to defend, get out and run in transition, but we've seen throughout the entirety of the regular season, particularly in the fourth quarters, and even a little bit in the playoffs, that they really could use some extra ball handling, some extra guard play, and someone who really instinctually understands the game in and out. I think his intelligence aligns very well with what Scotty Barnes does, how he plays and how he thinks the game.
Yes.
And it's quite comparable to Colin Murray Boyles on the defensive end. Like, CMB defensively is just like freakishly athletic, but he's also just so intuitive and understands where to be the right spot at the right time. And that's how I view Bennett Sturts offensively.
Yeah.
I think for all the reasons that Pistons fans could see him helping out Cade in Detroit, I see the same in Toronto with Scotty.
Yeah. Absolutely. I saw Sturts when he played at Drake in the NCAA tournament, and I just saw this guy firing up threes, man. And some of them were like balanced and off balance, and he was just a big shot maker. Like, he wasn't scared of the moment. Some guys are, especially in the NCAA tournament. And then he goes to Iowa. It's a little bit of the same thing. I think his passing got better. I think he became more of a floor general, and I like his skill set for this team. We did a video of Sturts about 3 or 4 months ago, Basketball Rewind. We were talking about him. We're just like, we like the skill set. Skill set actually is something that this Raptors team could use. I think always the question is, and it will always be brought up throughout this draft process with him, people will worry about the athleticism or the defense. Now, at the combine, he did really well at the combine. He's got like a 37.5-inch vertical. So he sounds like he's fairly athletic. He might not be the fastest guy in the gym. You don't have to be the fastest guy in the gym. You got to have an elite skill set or a couple elite skill sets. I think he does. Big shot maker. He's not scared. He
I would
runs
agree.
he runs a great pick and roll. But here's the problem with our team. We don't run much pick and roll. It's a lot of DHO, triple handoffs, and stuff like that. So I obviously, if we drafted him, I'm totally fine with it. I do wonder, though, I hope they put him in a situation, if they were to draft him, to bring out and play to his strengths and not so much the dribble handoff offense and pass it to Pearl at the high post and here we go. No, I want the ball in his hands. I want the ball in Scotty's hands. Let them guys make it work. That's just me.
Yeah. No, I hear you and I agree. And I think I mean, Darko has done a fantastic job of inserting, his play style, how he wants the team to play, unselfish. They have their goal for how many assists they want, per
Yeah.
game. I think Bennett Sturts fits into that 0.5 style of basketball for many reasons, as I, just listed. Instinctually, he knows before the ball arrives that I'm going to either attack this closeout, dribble strong side, or I'm going to make just a simple, one more extra swing, hockey pass, whatever it may be. I really do believe that he can fit into that play style in addition to the pick and roll game. And we've seen Emmanuel quickly have a high level of success in the pick and roll with a Jakob Pertl. So it's
Yes.
not that they don't run it. And again, there's going to be late shot clock scenarios or late game scenarios, where it bogs down and it's 5 seconds left on the clock and you might have to run a high ball screen pick and roll or what have you. So I think it's not just one or the other. Again, there's time and situation where it calls for one over the other. But that's why as a guard, I feel like he's versatile enough to play point, to play shooting guard, to
Yes.
play backup, to play on ball, off ball. And again, as you mentioned, yeah, he's not a perfect prospect. I don't think really anybody in this draft is. I mean, we can look at the number 2 pick overall projected and Peterson, and like there's defensive questions there. There's questions about each of these players. And yeah, while Sturts may not be the most athletic, as you mentioned, he did measure well. He's not as small as a Christian Anderson or as a Mbuka Okorie, despite Okorie's wingspan. He does have a longer wingspan in that regard. But he can run fast. He can run forever. He can dunk the basketball. People just kind of paint him into this box of what we've been accustomed to seeing from this archetype in the NBA, and I
Yes.
just don't really think he's that. I think he's a little bit different, and I just think if you surround him with the right type of talent and the right defensive pillars, he won't be as much as a liability as many suspect. I certainly don't believe he's any more of a defensive liability than IQ already is, or RJ is, or Bi. Even though Bi improved his defense this year under Darko, it's not like any one of these guys were really super strong point of attack defenders. And having said that, largely in part to Scotty Barnes and Colin Murray Boyles, the Raptors ended up as a top 5 defense overall, really, at the end of the day. So I think if you were to poll many Raptors fans, they would say that this team is in need of shooting. And now, as great as
Yes.
Jacoby played late and provided that, we still need a little bit more of that. And even IQ, for that matter, like as important as he was to bring in, there's still talks of we need him to take more threes. We need him to make more of the catch and shoot, especially the open catch and shoot threes, which we didn't really hit at a high clip this year. Um, and so again, guard play, culture, leadability, his leadership skills, what he's willing to do, sacrifice. And I know people see his age as a negative, but he's just got such a mature, fundamentally sound, stable, consistent. People want to say it's a safe pick, but I don't see it as safe. I just see it as like just a really good, solid, you know, I think piece that you can add to this puzzle as a connector, um, that really bodes well for the short term and the long term, in my personal opinion.
Yeah. No, you're 100% right. He does kind of get put into a box at times where it's, yeah, he does this well, but he does all these things not so well. Well, you can look at every prospect and say that. Darren Peterson's availability really concerns me. The talent doesn't, but his availability does. And, you know, sometimes it just depends on what program you go to. Let's just say Sacramento had the second pick and he went there. I would be worried about his career afterwards.
Absolutely.
You know,
Developments in question for sure. I mean,
yeah,
AJ, even the projected number one pick, can he shoot the three? Can he shoot beyond the mid range? There's questions about each and every one of these prospects, and no doubt, Sturts is not a perfect prospect by any stretch of the imagination.
yeah,
Is he going to fill out that much more? I don't know. He's already indicated that he's put on 8 pounds of muscle already. So, whether that's just fibbing on his part, but it certainly sounds like he's doing everything he needs to do to try to, be as physically fit for the next level, and so that he can, meet that physicality, especially once you get into the postseason.
yeah. I like what you said earlier about some people will complain about the age of a prospect. People, 1997, Tim Duncan was 22 years old when he got drafted by the Spurs. That turned out pretty well, and he went number one. I think Kareem back in the 70s, he was 22 when he came into the NBA. Don't worry, I've never been one to be concerned about the age of a prospect. Someone like Sturts, that just means he's going to hit probably his prime NBA timeline in the next few years and probably will be there for a while because draft picks come and they go, and there's always somebody else. So if I get a kid at 21 or 22, that just means they've developed a bit more versus some kid at 19. Obviously, you pick the kid at 19 if they're super special, a Cooper Flag or a Wemby, stuff like that. But I don't. That's one thing I've appreciated about the Miami Heat. They've never shied away from picking a prospect who's like 21 or 22 years old.
And we're gonna
I've always like that.
Yeah, I agree. And we're going to see more of that with the nil money.
Yes.
Prospects are going to be far more inclined to return to college for an additional year or two or what have you. If they're making 3 times the amount they could, as a later first round or second round draft pick. So I think we're going to see a lot more of this moving forward than we've seen, in recent years where it's, the one and dones. So again, for that reason, and we talk about best player available and fit, but where the Toronto Raptors currently are, in their timeline, there's been a lot of talks about, which stage they are at, in fact, but after this playoff run, I think there's a little bit more urgency to surround Scotty Barnes with talent. And I'm not saying like you're going to get that in the draft at the 19th overall pick.
No.
Not many 19 overall selections turn into superstars, right? But I do think that Bennett Sturts is a little bit better equipped to provide and produce for the Raptors sooner rather than later, right? So if they were to invest in someone younger, and and it could be a guard or a big like a Chris Sinak for example, like we've
Yeah.
heard how raw he is, and he may need time, especially as a big man, to develop. Do the Raptors have that luxury, to wait 1, 2, 3 years to see that prospect, produce at the level in which they may want to? I mean, CMB Columbus Boyles, what he did this year in year one, I don't know if anyone could have, anticipated or projected that. It took Jacoby, almost halfway through his second year to kind of get things going, and we've seen Grady fluctuate as well. So for that reason, and there's many other reasons, but again, I think Sturts can contribute sooner rather than later.
Yeah. People, I see we have a few watchers on here. If you have any questions, please put them in the comment section on YouTube. We'll get to them as soon as we can. Always appreciate the questions, and it's always good. And if anyone's watching, like, comment, and subscribe. Trying to build this up a little bit. If I get to 50 subscribers, I'd be pretty happy. I think I'm at 21 right now. If I get to 50, that'd be pretty cool.
Baby steps.
Baby steps, right? One small step for man.
Mhm.
Uh, but Yeah, I look. Raptors select Sturts. I'm perfectly fine with it because I like the skill set. The skill set is needed. If you want to, like you said, you're trying to prioritize the prime years of Scotty Barnes. Scotty showed you in the playoffs that he's the guy. I need to see in the playoffs. So regular season can be a bit different. And his second half was not good. I know he was hurt a little bit,
Post
but
All Star, yeah. Yeah.
in the playoffs though, he was better than Donovan Mitchell. He's better than James Harden. And I think next year, if he's building on this playoff performance, he's going to build into the regular season. And now you have to start surrounding him with what you just said earlier, shooting. It's been the kryptonite of this team for the last few years. They brag about having the Noah board hooked up in the practice facility. The only one that I've seen that can has benefit from it is Dylan Brooks when he played for Canada basketball. So
Bring him over. I'd take him as a Raptor. We need that toughness. We need that kind of mentality. But no, like imagine if Grady Dick hit the shots that he was supposed to hit this season.
yes,
Imagine if even early on, Ochai Abaji, who didn't, last year he looked great from beyond the arc. This year, prior to trading him to the Nets, he couldn't hit anything. So like, just imagine if the players made the shots they really were supposed to make.
yeah,
And I'm not comparing Sturts to Grady in that sense that they're just shooters.
yeah,
Sturts has far more point guard chops than Grady ever had or will ever have.
yeah.
But yeah, that's a skill set that's lacking from this roster. And I know we've gone out and we've tried to acquire offensive talent. Brandon Ingram is not known for his defense. Emmanuel Quickly is not known for his defense. RJ Barrett's not known for his defense. But at the same time, as a shooting guard, really, RJ Barrett isn't like known as the biggest threat from long range.
No,
Quickly's kind of got that odd release where it's a little bit lower. And again, like if you're playing with Scotty and Colin Murray Boyles and Jakob Pertl, on the floor at the same time, they may decide to go double big, to combat the Cleveland Cavaliers front courts of the world. You got to get shooting somewhere. And again,
yeah,
Jacoby, we touched on that, of course. We saw Shed make some shots in the playoffs, but he really struggled throughout the course of the regular season. So,
he did.
um, yeah, today's
Well,
day and
that
age, you need some shooting.
well, this is my question for you now about Sturts. Obviously, he's a point guard. Well, he can't play off guard. Raptors get 2 point guards already. They got one locked up in Quickly, who probably a little hard to trade right now with the contract. Although that contract the last 2 years isn't so bad, especially if the cap goes up because he's making a flat 32.
Yeah,
It's not like
yeah,
it's not like it's an upscaling or
yeah,
not descaling, but you kind of know what you're going to be paying for.
yeah.
And then you got Shed, who's up for an extension this year potentially. Now, if you draft Sturts,
Mm,
one of those guys, you might have to look to trade them. Trade Quickly. They're probably going to start Shed, which I understand.
mm.
You trade Shed, obviously Sturts is going to be backing up. So, do you see them making a move on one of those two if they draft Sturts, or what do you think?
That's a great question. Really great question. And again, like I'm maybe in the minority here, but I just don't see Emmanuel Quickly as a starting point guard. Or
You're
like I
not.
mean, if we want to say he's good, a good point guard, that might be as far as I'm willing to go. Again, if you're looking at the numbers in the box scores and whatnot, and you look at his points, rebounds, assists, his assist to turnover ratio, everything looks fairly healthy. But when it comes to critical moments within a basketball game, I mentioned like time and score, decision making, basketball IQ. If you're on a 3-1 fast break transition, maybe not pull up, for the three above the break when you've missed your last five shots, or, so there's just like a lot of little decisions like that where I know there was every intention on developing IQ into a starting point guard, right? Because from where he came, like he was not a starter. He was a
No.
sixth man shooter, bucket getter, scoring guard off the pine that we've tried to, develop into again, like starting point guard, combo guard, however you want to label that. But again, I see him best optimized as someone off ball. And we saw how well he played when Jamal Shed was running point and he could, kind of look for his own a little bit more. And so if you're playing IQ with the two, he's a little bit undersized. Having said that, Sturts is pretty much the same size.
Yeah.
You can't have IQ coming off the bench as your sixth man if you're paying him $32 million, right? So it's odd, it's tricky. I don't mind Jamal Shed. I mean, we've seen what he can do given starting point guard responsibilities. Again, with the right teammates, in that lineup with him, and he just brings a different, like he brings a totally different makeup and style of play to the team. He's not in there, to be a scoring guard like Emmanuel Quickly. He's there to run the offense, orchestrate it, organize it as Bennett Sturts would. So if you're getting off of 30 million in IQ to shuffle Shed into your starting unit and have Sturts off the bench, yeah, I'm okay with that. You are a little bit undersized at point guard with Shed, and I do prefer him as a backup point guard as opposed to a
Yeah.
starting
Same with
point
me.
guard. Make no mistake. Yeah, like and again, in an ideal world, IQ's not a starting one, Shed's not a starting one. Um, I don't know if Sturts can be a starting one like right off the hop, right off the rip. I mean, it took even CMB a little while to settle in, and find his place within what the team requires to be successful. So it's tricky, but if you were to ask me which would you rather have, IQ and Shed, or Sturts and Shed, it's a no-brainer for me because it's just a way cheaper option, which provides really similar play style. I mean, anything and everything that IQ does, I believe Sturts can do just as well. Especially if you do project down the road, and you say, okay, at 26 or at 27, will Sturts be as good as Emmanuel Quickly? Like, I have no doubt. Um, so it's tricky.
Yeah.
It is, and you do wonder, like, if you do get off of IQ, excuse me, do you bring in a Jalen Suggs, a De'Aaron Fox, a John Morant? So do you upgrade your PG1 that way via trade?
Yeah. There was a deal I saw someone, it was one of those mock deals, but I actually liked it. I didn't mind it. Because at first I wasn't really for this deal, but I'm like, okay, I can maybe see that. It was like IQ and Grady, because you got to make the money work
Mhm.
for John Morant and pick 32. Now, that pick 32 from the Grizzlies, you're going to get a first round talent that falls into the
Yeah,
second round. And that, again, that's a cheaper option. You could, let Trey Jackson Davis go. Maybe Mobo goes. I'm not sure how that works. But, if the Raptors like another person in this draft later in the first round and they slip to the second round and you get John Morant, I know Morant might not be the best fit in terms of that's a lot of guys need the basketball in their hands. But if you're looking for talent acquisition, there ain't many talented point guards in the NBA like John Morant. Injuries are his problem. He can run an offense. He's pretty good at running an offense. He can shoot the ball very well. But that means you have to draft shooting for John Morant and Scotty Barnes. Right?
exactly. And I mean, there's going to be trade offs. I mean, if you're looking for someone, like, people point to a Corey and how quick of a first step he has, and the paint touches, and how he's
Yeah.
able to get into the heart of the defense and spray it out and what have you. I mean, that's what Ja Moran is known for. Not to mention he does have a previous relationship with our head coach in Darko,
Yeah.
and he absolutely needs a new change in scenery. Now, I'm not saying he's the ultimate solution,
No.
but I agree with you. If we're dangling IQ, excuse me, for John Morant, I'd take that in a heartbeat. I'd take almost, I don't want to say any point guard in return for IQ, but I think there's some that could be available. There's Derek White that's been, rumored to be maybe packaged out. I mean, of course, I don't want to give up RJ and CMB for Derek White, but
Oh
you look
gosh,
at the
no.
Suggs and the Derek Whites and the Drew Holidays and the John Morants, and yeah, they're a little bit older and they still get paid quite a bit as well. But when you do look at the money, you could maybe, make that work in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. I'm a big RJ Barrett fan. I get a jersey of his. I don't have it here with me in Nova Scotia, but I do have one. And in part, that was because of what I saw in Halifax about 10 years ago, whatever it was, 10, 12 years ago. Seeing this 14-year-old kid play U17, you just knew he could be going somewhere at least. But I've always been appreciative of how much he loves playing in Toronto. I know he's from here and what he means to Canada basketball, especially his dad kind of running things. So I'll ask you this question just to slightly shift. Um, Obviously, RJ's got a contract extension coming up. He wants to stay here, but I'm sure he wants to get paid too. I understand it. Raptors are, again, a bit of a cap crunch. Can't give everybody money. What do you do? Are you offering RJ an extension? Do you think he deserves one, or are you looking to trade him?
That's a tough one. If you had asked me that question early on in the regular season, I was ready to get off of
Yeah,
RJ as soon as we, as soon as we could. And again, I should start with I like RJ Barrett as well. I think I've been very critical of his play, and some people might misconstrue that as something other than. But I saw RJ Barrett training with Canada basketball when I was interning with them. I saw him
yeah,
at 10, 11 years old doing the targeted athlete strategies, as you mentioned, with guys 5 years older than him. So
yeah,
I've seen him really develop and come a long way, and I know he's dealt with a lot of personal
yeah,
stuff recently with his family member passing away, and so life can really affect you in many ways, and you add the injuries in which he faced on top of it all. That is a lot, and the pressure of being a hometown kid, and knowing that he was included in the package for OG Anunoby, a beloved Toronto Raptors.
yeah.
And that I'm sure he's seen and heard all the banter of negative asset, and what have you. So I think he's done his absolute best, to meet any expectations, and he certainly surpassed them in the postseason, in the playoffs. It was nice to see, his aggression and tenacity, and his bully ball style of play in a physical environment. When it was really most needed. Having said that, again, the money matters, right? So if you can't get off of Jakob Poeltl due to health concerns and the length of his contract, I don't know if the Raptors are eager to flip, BI after essentially just trading for him and having an all-star season out of him. Granted, as a replacement, and he played the most games he's played in years. So coming off of an injury, they've done a good job, managing his injury woes and what have you. So, you talk about a Ja Morant, can we do the same for him? But when it comes to RJ, again, it really all depends on what you can get for either one of IQ, RJ, or Jakob. And if you need to include two of them in a package, you may need to. But if you can flip BI, let's say for I don't know, I'll get a bunch of hate for this, but like an Anthony Davis or a Kevin Durant or someone of that comparable. Not that, in my opinion, Brandon Ingram's as good as Anthony Davis, but there's still whispers that he's unsatisfied in Washington, and he could be traded before the regular season gets going. So it just really all depends on who you can trade first and what you can get for these athletes, these guys. But if RJ is making close to 30 million right now, and he had one of his better seasons, including the playoffs, I'm sure there is a little bit of like, hey, as the third option on this team, my numbers were pretty close to what Brandon Ingram was producing. He's making 40. The OG guy, of the world that I got traded for, they're making north of 40. And the way that money's being handed out and contracts are being handed out, like, he may be willing to a certain extent be open to a hometown discount.
I think so.
But, but at the end of the day, it is a business. There's been a lot of smoke around, interest from Sacramento and what have you. So I'm really curious to see essentially who gets dealt first. So if it is RJ, I appreciate everything he's done,
Yeah,
for this organization. And, sometimes that's how it goes, right? Like, as much as you want to remain with a franchise, it's always excuse me, what's in the best interest. And um, ultimately it may end up being the hometown hero who made the big shot be the one on the way out.
Yeah. Cool, Cat. Thank you for coming. Notifications not working. You probably blame me for that. I'm not the most tech savvy person, but this was something that I posted earlier. But I appreciate you coming. Always appreciate your questions that you ask, and always in our spaces too. Especially the cookout. It's always a good time. You got to come sometime, Ryan, to the cookout. I'm not
I
sure if you've
popped
been
in.
in.
I popped in one night, and it was chaos. It was pure. I mean, I appreciate the passion. Everyone. I mean, when you're deep into the Raptors community as much as we are,
Yeah.
you get familiar with some personalities and what have you, and you really appreciate all the different point of views and opinions. Um, but where it's typically so fresh after a game, and if it's after a loss, um, it can get a little certainly entertaining. It can get a
Entertaining.
little hot.
That's a good word for it for sure. But you're right. And we had a very passionate fan base. Like obviously after we win, man, that guy's an all-star. He's great. We get a loss. Man, send that guy out the door. It's pretty funny. It's pretty funny at times, but it's all part of watching
Recency bias. Yeah.
recency bias, watching a team and stuff like that.
Yeah, the ups and downs and the ebbs and flows. I mean, that's it's a long season, right? So there's going to be stretches where you go on a 10-game winning streak, and there's going to be stretches where you lose to the Sacramento Kings, when you have playoff seating on the line, and it's like doom and gloom. But Darko did a great job, as he said, like, we're where we're supposed to be, and the sky's not falling, it's just snow, and all the PR stuff that he needed to say, and they weathered those storms, and they had a relatively good season.
Yeah. Uh, I'm going to do a little rapid fire with you. You give me a yes or no answer, just a couple of questions. Mamu, bring him back.
It depends on the price. I think he's willing. When it comes to like taking a discount, I think Mamu's more inclined to do so as opposed to someone like RJ or others.
Yeah.
So at the right price, yes.
Okay. Bi, you trading him or keeping him?
Keeping them for now. Again, unless there's a trade there that makes perfect sense. Like I don't know if a Bi for Jaw trade makes sense to be
Yeah, I don't
honest.
think that does make sense to me.
So I think it might be. Excuse me, I'm a little bit under the weather here. I had my get home sick today, so I'm having a bit of a coughing fit over here.
No
I
worries.
think it's a little bit premature. Um, to pull the plug on the BI experiment just yet. So I'd give that a little bit more time.
Okay.
Uh,
RJ, extend or trade?
yeah, if it's one of the two, I'm trading. Again, like especially with his trade value, it's probably higher than it's ever going to be.
True.
Um, and again with Bi, you'd think that maybe his value is a little bit higher, given that he played as many games as he did, and he was an all-star. But now with the injury and the surgery and everything that occurred in the playoffs, I don't know how many teams may be all that eager to bring him aboard.
Yeah. Pirtle. Now I'm going to preface it in this way. I can't just say trade him or keep him because trade him means likely you got to attach picks or a unprotected pick, maybe two. So do you, as my friend Beyond says, do we drink our Buckleys and suck it up and keep Pirtle, or are you willing to attach a pick or two to get off the
Yeah, I'm not.
contract?
I'm not willing to attach a pick. I think the trade, the day we traded for him was a mistake to begin with, in my
It
opinion.
was. I
Right.
agree. I
So
said
you're not going to double down and compound a mistake by making another mistake and sending out more draft capital just to get off someone that you may have overpaid. Right. So, and again, like how many teams are really chomping at the bit for someone, like Yak, who's now 30, back issues, had a rough season. There were stretches in the postseason where it's like, man, is he even playable? He had moments, but again, I just think it's going to be that much more difficult to get off of someone like Yak until he recoups some of his trade value, perhaps,
Mhm.
which makes RJ far more likely again to be traded in my opinion.
Yeah, we got Matt here in our comments. Keep Pirtle for now. I'm not attaching a pick. I'd rather wait it out. I'm in agreement as well. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I'd rather send out another young player if I have to. Like if it was like Pirtle and Grady, and then you take back a contract of someone, I'm fine with that. I'm not sending out 2026, 2027, 28 picks or 2030 picks. I might be willing to send out a second round, future, a couple seconds maybe, but
And the Raptors have a history of identifying talent and then developing that talent, within the draft. Like we're not a big free agency destiny, so a lot of what we do, lies within the trade market or via the draft and then internal development. So to get off of any pick or several picks just doesn't make sense in my mind. Again, if it's the right deal, if like you said, if it's let's say just for example, it's Miles Turner, are you willing to include a future second or 2 seconds or whatever the case may be? Yeah, if there's opportunity to be had, sure. But I just don't think we're going to see that anytime soon. Given what we saw this past season.
yeah. My thing with Turner, I get it offensively, he would be a better fit. There's no question about that. My issue is he does as much rebounding as you and I do. He don't rebound very much. That's what Pirtle at least will rebound a bit. He'll try, I guess. I just see us. It's a big problem rebounding the basketball, and it has been this entire season. So let's just say, for example, Sturts was not on the board, and I'm looking for a guy who can probably rebound, and maybe a guy who can fit alongside Scotty, maybe CMB. The kid from Washington, Steinbach, is someone I've been kind of looking at. My friend Mouth of the North is probably loving this right now because he's a big Steinbach guy. But if I'm looking to build around Scotty and CMB, I got two guys who are not good shooters on the from outside. I got to draft someone. If it's a big, I got to draft a center who at least can be a threat to shoot the three. Steinbach basically does what Sabonis does. Like he rebounds fairly well, and these guys seem to like Sabonis and be connected to him. I'll ask you this question: if they drafted a center, and like I don't know how much you know about Steinbach,
Yeah.
would you be fine with that, or what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Again, depending on who's on the board, who's still available, and what have you. It's time back at 19. It's nothing to slouch about. And I get some people for the same reasons that they have reservations with Bennett Sturts. Oh, he's Grady Dick. People look at Steinbach. Oh, it's Jakob Poeltl, and we just we went through that, and no, we don't want that. But as you mentioned, he does provide a lot of what the Raptors do need when it
Yeah,
comes to a big with a versatile skill set, pick and pop, roll, protect the rim, passing ability. And again, a connector piece. Like he's not someone that you need, the ball in his hands all the time. He can do the little things, really well. So again, there's a handful of athletes. Chris Sinak Jr. is,
yeah,
another one who can stretch the floor. Again, we mentioned he's a little bit more raw in comparison to someone like Steinbach. Um,
yeah.
but man, I just trust that Houston system, that program, and what
Yes, I
coach
do
has
too.
done there. And you look at Jamal Shed, and you just, I, there's just something about coach, and he's been very vocal on the record, singing Sinak's praises. Understandably so. He's his head coach, so coaches are going to do that, and he's going to try to help his draft stock and all that. But I don't see him as one just kind of talking out of his rear end just for the sake of giving a little fluff piece to somebody. I do think that Sinak is an extremely hard worker, coachable. He'll be a great teammate, and I think he'd provide a lot of what the Raptors may have been accustomed to seeing, from someone like a Serge Ibaka, right? A level of
Yeah,
toughness, can stretch the floor, protect the rim. He's got shot blocking ability as well. So
yeah,
you see the potential there with someone like a Sanak or a Hans Steinbach as well. Again, I just even last year they were in a position to draft a center. Everyone knew they needed a center. They wanted a center, and ultimately we passed up on a true center. Yes, CMB has played minutes at the five, but I think we all know that he's really more of a true four than he is a five. Small ball five's great, death lineup, end of game, what have you. But CMB can't play 82 games worth of starting center minutes. So I wouldn't be surprised if they go big. Whether Morris Johnson Jr. is there at 19, whether
Ooh,
they
I know
decide to
that's my
trade
guy.
up, yeah, no, there's the slim chances of that. But do the Raptors, if they, if they have someone they really do want and like, do they decide to trade up? And maybe get them there at 17 as opposed to 19. What would they have to give up for that? They could even go back. The Spurs have the 20th pick, but they also have a couple in the second round, like 42 and 44. So maybe we go back a slot and we upgrade on the back end, in the early 40s instead of that 50th. So there's a bunch of different ways that we can go here. But whether it's a point guard, whether it's a big, or whether it's a wing like Carr, I mean, really, you can't go wrong with any of the crop of athletes that are projected to fall within that range.
Yeah. Well, I spoke to Tyler Rucker about a week ago because he mentioned about Sinak. He said, "Look, if you're willing to be patient, go with
Yeah.
Sinak because offensively he is kind of raw. He's got good shooting mechanics, and I could see that at Houston. And he's a workhorse. Like Calvin Sampson, you play for him, man. It's just like NBA teams that just flock to. They're like, we want that guy. He plays for Sampson. He's going to be a good pick because if you can play at Houston in that program, you can play in the NBA." So I always find I call it like the Houston influence to help your draft stock. So Sanax, that's going to help. Kingston Fleming's too at Houston. He's going to go top 10. Very good point guard. But yeah, my thing is, and I'll ask you this question: do you start CMB next year?
I do. I'll die on that hill, and I know many have been opposed to that stance, but um, and not that CMB is as good as a Dylan Harper, but we're seeing that now where it's just like, what do we do with De'Aaron Fox? Like, we can't have Harper coming off the bench. Like, he
No, you
needs
can't.
as many minutes and playing time as he can get. And I was screaming at the top of my lungs in the playoffs, like, put CMB on, put him in, muck up the game. He's a game wrecker. You have him and Scotty out there. Yeah, the shooting might take a bit of a hit, but defensively, my God, like it's another level of switchability and versatility and athleticism and defensive chops and what have you. So I would absolutely start Colin Murray Boyles next year. I know many are opposed to that. Give Jakob Pertl another chance. You need a true 7-footer there. You can still bring Boyles off the bench and give him close to 30 minutes a game. But given what I've seen and what he can handle and how quickly he could handle what was thrown at him with another year under his belt, some off-season work, working on his offensive repertoire and what have you, and hopefully with a healthy thumb. There's just the you kind of it's mind-boggling to think really what he could do with more runs. So I would love to see him start at the 4 again with a stretch 5, right?
Same as me.
Like,
Yes, there you go.
absolutely. So and I'm more than okay with Jakob coming off the bench. Again, it stings a little bit knowing that we're paying him what we will be paying him, and to have that come off the bench. But again, like, I'll go to the De'Aaron Fox thing. Like, just because these guys are stable veterans, or they're being paid north of 30-40 million dollars a year, like, does that mean that you have to start them or play them more than the younger guys because of really like non-basketball producing related reasons? I think CMB's earned it, personally. So yes, I would 100% start Colin Murray Boyles, preferably at the 4.
Yeah,
Starting him at the 5 all season long might be asking a bit much. Um, so we'll see. We'll see.
yeah. I'm the same as you. In the playoffs, really showed me his toughness. Like I saw it throughout the season. Don't get me wrong, but his ability to just his defense is the biggest thing. Like I was not a fan of the pick last year. I was pretty kind of vocal about it. But I always said this guy's defense of South Carolina was elite. You're getting a big time defensive player. I just didn't like how they were going to try to pair this with Scotty. I just didn't think that was the right pick to help Scotty out, but it was fine. They went with the guy who they thought was best player available. I understand that. What you just said, CMB to me can't play center for 82 games next year. You're just going to run into Mitchell Robinsons and Cats and Jokic's
Mm-hmm.
and Embiid. You're eventually going to run into guys who are over 7 foot, and that's going to be a
Yeah.
problem for someone who's
Yeah.
6'7", even though he plays much bigger than his size.
Mm-hmm.
But my thing is, I can move Scotty to the three next year. He's got to improve the 3 point shot. I
Yeah.
can see it doing that. And then if you get me a center who can stretch, who can just space out the floor for those
Yeah.
guys to operate, that's why Steinbach is interesting to me. Obviously, if you draft Steinbach, he ain't not starting center
Mm-hmm.
next year. They
Mm-hmm.
probably would go with Pirtle. And if
Yep.
Pirtle's still here, they'll go with Scotty Ingram and RJ again. What I'm trying to say is you could take a year next year. CMB still plays 30 minutes, but you can have a bench. Just throwing this out there. Steinbach and CMB playing together. I think they can because they're polar
Yeah.
opposites in the
Absolutely.
games.
Yep.
You can have Jacoby still come in off the bench and shed. There's 9 guys right there, and filled in your other guy with a small MLE or an MLE guy
Yep.
who can shoot. And you still have Jameis in battle. He showed
Yep.
something in the playoffs too. I just hope Darko plays him a bit more during the season because I think he can help. But I find there you're working with something now and in the future. If you had CMB and Walter and Steinbach. Like you got something there. Pirtle will go down. We all know that. CMB will get a ton of minutes, but that's assuming that Brandon Ingram is still on this team and RJ. Like that might change, and then CMB just moves into the starting lineup. Because you're right, he's certainly making a case to start. I just don't like him and Scotty playing center because you're going to wear them down
Yeah.
physically.
Well, and that's the thing that seems to stand out with this team, right? Like it's like IQ. Yeah, you can play him at the one or the two, but ideally he's not a one. Sure, you can play Scotty at the five, but really, he probably shouldn't be playing the five. Yeah, you can play CMB at the five, but he really probably shouldn't be playing the five. Like, and so then when you talk about, okay, do we just run it back? I'm never really, a big fan of doing that, especially when we were unable to get out of the first round. Having said that, we didn't have Emmanuel quickly.
Yeah.
We didn't have the best of Brandon Ingram, and then we didn't have Brandon Ingram at the tail end of the series. We didn't have really Jakob Poeltl contributing all that much at all. So you do have to ask yourself, like, if we had just one of those things, are we able to get past Cleveland in the first round? And then who knows what happens from there? Maybe we do match up better with a Detroit or what have you. So to know that we were that close, but again, you look at the East, the East is going to improve and it's going to get better. You can't
Yes.
stay still. You can't be static. You have to look to improve and evolve. And again, surround Scotty with the more appropriate talent.
Yeah, absolutely. And you hit the nail on the head there, but the East is going to improve next year. Indiana's going to be good again next year. Charlotte finished the second half of the year as like the greatest number 9 seed there's ever been. uh,
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. The Washington Wizards. I don't know what this whole AD situation is going to look like, or Debance at number 1. They have a ton of young talent.
Yeah.
They're
Very
going to
young.
shock some people this year about how good they might be. They got shooting, they got size, they got length in Sarr and Anthony Davis.
Yeah.
They're going to have one of Debanza or Peterson.
Yeah.
I love the direction the Washington Wizards are going.
I'm not knocking it. I mean, I was one of those people last year even who was like, listen, if it's IQ for Trey, I'll take that swap. But again, it was reports came out that Atlanta didn't want to go that route. They preferred CJ over IQ. And so yeah, it'll be interesting to see, what they do in terms of, how long they're able to run it back for. Like if they do run it back by the trade deadline, something's probably got to give, right? Like, and again, the thing with RJ, right? We've seen this happen before with Pascal, where it's like you wait and you wait and you wait,
Yep.
and you probably maybe should have pulled the trigger when his stock and his value was as high as it was, and then everyone knew you had to get off of him and get rid of, whatever, so you don't get as much in return, and you play that game. It just we haven't seen it really unfold as favorably for us as we would hope for.
Yep.
So again, when it comes to like running it back, yeah, can you improve in the margin? Like like you said, do you shed Grady Dick, Mamu, and Mobo, and maybe you get a piece. Do you get off of IQ for two, you know, two players that, make up for his money, and kind of spread the love around and fill some gaps that way, right? Like there's just so many ways in which the team can go here, but to stand put and really not do anything beyond, banking on internal development and then, whatever your 19 pick can give you, like sure there might be some marginal improvement there, but I think there's certainly much more that the team could do and should do, to try to propel them forward and build on, you know, where we've advanced the past couple of years.
Yes. No, absolutely. You can't stay stagnant. That's the big point I think that you're saying. And you got Scotty Barnes, who'll be 25 years old next year. Prime
Yeah.
years. We go take it. We go
I,
try to take advantage of them, or we go to
and I,
listen.
and I knock, yeah, I knock on wood, but I mean, like, who knows? Injury anything can happen. I mean, we've seen it happen, to some high profile athletes, like God forbid,
Yep.
cross my fingers and toes that doesn't happen, but you just don't know. In the NBA, anything can happen. The Cavaliers have James Harden back probably for a full, season as
Yep.
opposed to half of a season. Who knows? Giannis could be a Miami Heat. He could be in Boston for Brant. Like all these teams, Detroit's going to get better. They're going to go get Cade some support and some shooting and some additional playmaking. Even Orlando was banged up a lot last year. Like they were injured.
Yeah.
If they catch a little bit of a healthier break, they're nipping at the Raptors' heels last year. The Hawks were right there with all the trades they made. I mean, they were right there. So the East is it's competitive, and again, you can't kind of just hang tight and see what happens. Um, so yeah, like when you talk about the bigs and the rebounding and the spacing, would we rather have a Hans Steinbach or a Chris Sanak over a 60 million Sabonis or whatever it may be?
Yeah.
Probably, yeah. When you're getting your bang for your buck there, and you talk about the deficiencies on the defensive end, sure, he fills the rebounding void. Again, like all these athletes, Sanak, he can rebound, he can shoot, but he's raw. He'll have to wait, a few years to develop offensively. Sturts can shoot, but he can't defend. I mean, there's going to be some give and take here. So it's just a matter of
Yep.
what you prioritize and where you see those gaps and where you can plug those in. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a we'll look to close this up in a few minutes. It's been a really awesome conversation, but I just wanted to say this point, and it's the right thing to say, and I get why Bobby said it, but I didn't like it. This is why. Bobby in his end of season presser said, "We're going to target two-way guys who play both ends of the floor." Okay. Here's why I don't like that. I know it's the right thing to say. I get it. Do I pass on Donovan Mitchell at 19 because he doesn't play great defense? No. I wish he would have said we're going to pick the best player available. Do I pass on Luka Doncic because he hasn't played much defense, but he'll go average 30 for me?
Well, that's it. Jalen Brunson, you can go up and you can go down the
There
list
you
of all the
go.
elite offensive talent.
Yeah.
Like you're not drafting them or playing them for their defensive prowess.
Yeah, it's well. I'll use the Sturts example. Let's say Sturts comes into the NBA. He's averaging 25, not his first year, but let's say second, third, fourth. Let's just say that he becomes this unbelievable scorer. But I can't. I'm not selecting him because and we don't like his defense that much. Like that would be a
Well,
really bad decision on that, right? Because let's go best player available.
yeah, it could be. I mean, again, it all depends on how willing or unwilling, Darko may be uh, when it comes to how he wants to defend. Are you going
Yeah.
to switch everything all the time? Right? Are there going to be moments in a game where maybe instead of switching, we can go over under whatever, like whatever the case may be. So as I mentioned, like offensively, yeah, point 0.5, but there's still opportunities for pick and roll and what have you. Defensively, yeah, point of attack. Bennett Sturts is not going to be a lockdown Case and Wallace type, who's another name that's been kind of thrown out there as maybe a Raptors target, which I wouldn't mind, to be perfectly
Oh, he's
honest.
got interest in Toronto.
Yeah, he's got a significant other who
He's
plays
got yeah.
Kiki Rice. So, but he mentioned he wants to get better and develop too, and certainly there's opportunity for that in Toronto, and we know what he does on the defensive end. So yeah, in a perfect world, you want two-way players. You can't have liabilities out on the floor, but especially you can't have multiple liabilities, in the same lineup. So if Sturts can hold his own, defensively off ball, again with some growth and development, on ball, but with a front court to back him up, like if you had a, let's just say even like a Rudy Gobert, not that I want Rudy,
Yeah.
but behind you, it's not as much of a concern. So again, it really all depends on the personnel, your style of play, how far you're willing to bend, perhaps on some of these things. But yeah, in an ideal world, two-way players are, you don't want to be picked on, you don't want to be targeted. We've seen it happen in the postseason, like we
Yeah.
do. Um, but yeah, like it's not like Steph Curry's the best defender or Damian Lillard's the greatest defender, or and again, I'm
True.
not comparing Bennett Sturts to these players. He's not that, but not everyone's going to be perfect. And I know the Raptors are far more inclined to typically, draft defenders and try to mold them into, offensive capable players, as opposed to let's get someone who's offensive first and try to get them to defend. I mean, I know as much as you like RJ, he's been in the league how many years now, and we're still having that conversation. Like, we really need more consistency from
Yeah.
you on that end, right? And it's great when someone like an RJ or a Sturts can give you 20, but if you're giving 20 up, 20 on the other end, it doesn't really mean a whole lot. So
Yeah.
yeah,
No,
perfect world, you get two-way players.
yeah.
But
No, yeah, it's certainly in a perfect world, but I think why a guy like Sturts could be appealing in some sense is the Raptors were top five in defense this year, and there's only two players that was on the backs of Scotty and
that's
CMB, maybe Jacoby, but that was
yeah,
basically it. Like,
yeah,
it's amazing we were a top five defense. Like, you might say it's fake for 25 games of the season. That's a bit of a blip. They did it for 82 games, top five. Like, they didn't score very well, and that's what makes a guy like Sturts, an attractive prospect. Or a guy even like Steinbach, who averaged a double double as a freshman, almost like 20 and 12 or 19 and 12. Or a guy like Merez Johnson, who, if you watch the playoffs, these switchable bigs who can guard out on the perimeter, protect the rim, guard in the post, mid post. That's why I like him, because I think his
oh,
game can translate
perfect.
to the playoffs. Because Harden and Mitchell were hunting Pirtle and Mamu, and you couldn't play him very much. That was my worry about bringing back Mamu. If I can't play you in the playoffs,
Yeah,
I don't know if you're going to be able to. I want guys who I know can play in the playoffs. I know I could play Merez Johnson in the playoffs, and I think he could play
yeah,
alongside a CMB or Scotty, because he also's
I agree.
got nice form, and his
Yep.
draft stock has really helped. So I don't think he's going to be there at 19,
Yeah, I
unfortunately.
don't. I hope to God some miracle happens, but I agree with every word you just said. I think you could plug and play him in postseason basketball tomorrow, and
Yeah,
you'd probably see something similar to CMB, to be
yeah,
honest.
yeah. No,
And
I think Harden and Mitchell they weren't hunting Scotty and CMB on switches. No, they won't with that. They would rather have Jamal Shed stay in front of them. Again, Shed's a pretty good defender, but
he
they
held
were
his
looking
own.
for
Yeah,
Pirtle and
yeah.
Mamu. They're what
Even
get their
RJ in the first
switches.
two games, like the pick and roll, like to a point where Darko had to make an adjustment, and like RJ's defending Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. You know what I mean? Like and he can, to a certain extent,
Yeah,
to a certain degree, given he's pretty solid physically and what have you. But yeah, I mean, teams are gonna find a weakness. They're gonna expose your weakest link, whoever, whatever that looks like. I mean, I'm sure
yeah,
Jalen Brunson's getting targeted to a certain extent. There's going to be at least one of five players where it's like, okay, well, this is the lesser of the defensive evils. Like, let's attack this.
yeah,
Again, in a perfect world, you have five players who aren't liability defensively or offensively. Like, again, this is why I like seeing being to play as many minutes as possible is to offset that defensive load that Scotty's been asked to carry for so long. And
Yeah.
everyone's, wants to see Scotty take that next step. Well, if you get someone like CMB in there to take the defensive load, and you get someone like a Bennett Sturts to, handle a little bit more of the offensive load, that really does kind of free up Scotty to do a little bit more of some other stuff that everyone's really been demanding, from who's, been our, go-to superstar. He certainly played like one in the postseason. So yeah, it's tough because you may have someone in there to play defense, or you have someone in there for size like a Jakob Poeltl, but really offensively, he's not giving you a whole lot unless you're hitting him in a in the dunker spot in a pick and roll, because he's not looking to shoot it. He's he gets the ball in the high post and defense is sagging off.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, two-way players are you want them at 1 through 5, but again, I think it's just critical that if you have someone who's a little bit less inclined on one end of the floor, you have others who can make up for said deficiencies to a certain extent.
Yeah. Well, this has been an excellent conversation. Really enjoyed this, and appreciate you coming. Do you have any last thoughts? Give you the last word of the night.
Oh man, no, honestly, I'm just super excited for the draft. I don't think I've ever really covered a draft as closely and as passionately as I have covered this one. So looking forward to draft night. Maybe we'll have to get together again and chop it up. Maybe after they make their selection, but it's a fun time. I think we're in a good spot as a franchise, and we've got at least one solid player being added to our roster, whether it be a guard, wing, big, and amongst the names that we've mentioned. So no, just super stoked. Again, really thankful and grateful that you asked me to be a part of this. Really enjoyed it. Love what you do, and love what a lot of the content creators are doing in this space, and just happy to be a very small voice and small part of it.
Hey, man, your voice is growing. we, I love certainly
Growth and
seeing
development.
your what you say on some of the prospects and stuff like that. I know Raptors Republic has shared a few of your things as well. It's just been good conversation on basketball and the draft. And I love the draft. It's like Christmas for me.
It's
It's really cool to cover and talk to people who kind of are more involved, I guess, maybe than some of us who actually do it for a living, which is kind of cool.
Well, you
But
mentioned that Tyler had who you had on the show, and they're all the folks at No Ceilings. Those, I mean, they do tremendous work. Yeah.
yeah,
So it was,
no, they
when you
do it
asked
all
me to
year
follow
round.
follow Tyler, I was like, that's gonna be a tough act to follow.
You did fine. Well, the thing is, I did the show. My internet went out halfway
I
through. Just
saw you
went out.
disappear for. Yeah, I was like, where'd Coach go? Yeah.
I just disappeared. So this is like my first. I feel like this is more like a first episode for me talking about kind of some of these things, because knock on wood, I'm in a place where there's good internet right now, at least for now.
Yeah.
Anyway,
There you go.
but awesome, Ryan. Thank you so much for coming, folks. I'll still be hoping to have Ryan back. At some point, maybe after the draft or just before the draft, whenever maybe he's free and we're all free, just to cover some things. I'm sure there'll be some new developments by that point, and then yeah, it'd be great to chop it up and we'll discuss more. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone in the comments who made had some questions or some statements to make. That was great. Please take care. Thank you so much, and like, comment, and subscribe. Take care, everyone. See you around.